Millionaire challenges poor black beggar. Turn $500 into a fortune in 2 months, and I'll give you 30% of my company. The result, no one expected. The Detroit air hung thick and heavy that morning, like always. Exhaust fumes mixed with the damp scent of the nearby river and something deeper, older, the smell of a city that had seen hard times. Elijah Freeman felt that heaviness in his bones as he shuffled towards his usual spot on the corner of 7th and Grand. At 40, life had carved deep lines into his dark face, lines that spoke of years spent outdoors, of worry, of simply trying to survive. His worn clothes hung loose, and his old shoes barely held together. This corner, with its chipped brick wall and view of passing traffic, was his office. His sign, a simple piece of cardboard with the faded words, "Anything helps, God bless," rested against the wall. He settled onto his thin blanket, the cold concrete seeping through. The early rush hour began, a river of cars and people flowing past. Most ignored him, eyes fixed straight ahead or down at their phones. A few dropped coins or a crumpled dollar into his dented cup. Clink, rustle, small sounds that meant maybe breakfast, maybe not. Then came the laughter, harsh mocking. Elijah didn't even need to look up to know it was them, the three white teenagers who seemed to find his existence endlessly entertaining. They swaggered past, designer backpacks slung carelessly. "Hey, look, it's the neighborhood decoration," one sneered, a tall boy with close-cropped blonde hair. "Smells like he bathed in the river today." Another, shorter with a smirk, added, pinching his nose dramatically. "Or maybe just rolled in the trash he belongs with." The third, leaning against the wall near Elijah, kicked lightly at his cup, sending a few coins skittering. "Seriously, dude, why you even here? Shouldn't you be back in Africa or something with all the other poor losers?" The words bastard, pure, a mangled insult they probably didn't understand, stinking piece of junk, rained down. Elijah kept his head down, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. He was used to it. Detroit streets taught you thick skin, but used to it didn't mean it didn't hurt. It was a dull, familiar ache, like a bruise that never fully healed. He focused on a crack in the pavement, tracing its jagged path with his eyes, trying to shrink inside himself. Sometimes, the shame felt heavier than the hunger. Hey, family, stories like this show the resilience in our community. But what happens next? You won't believe it. Keep watching to see how Elijah turns $500 into a fortune. Remember, you're part of something bigger. This is Black Nation. Hit subscribe for more powerful stories of overcoming. He couldn't take it today. The laughter scraped raw against his nerves. Gathering his blanket and sign, Elijah pushed himself up, his joints protesting. He'd find another spot, maybe near the bus depot. Less money, maybe, but less them. As he turned, the sharp thunk of a car, door closing cut through the boy's jeers. A sleek, obsidian black Mercedes had pulled silently to the curb. Out stepped a man who seemed like he'd stepped off a movie screen. Impeccably tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, polished shoes that gleamed even in the dull Detroit light. He moved with an easy confidence that commanded the sidewalk. Elijah froze. The very air around this man felt different, clean, expensive, powerful. That suit alone, Elijah thought numbly, could probably buy everything he'd ever owned 10 times over. The man's voice, calm but sharp as a whip, silenced the teenagers instantly. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" The boy's smirks vanished, replaced by wide-eyed recognition and sudden fear. "Mr. Vale, we weren't." The blonde one stammered. "Apologize." Now, Harrison Vale's gaze swept over them, leaving no room for argument. They mumbled apologies, eyes fixed on the ground, their earlier bravado completely evaporated. It was clear they knew exactly who he was. Harrison Vale, a name whispered with respect and sometimes envy. Across Detroit business circles, a man whose wealth was legendary. Elijah had heard the name, a distant rumor, never connected to a face. The boys shuffled away, casting nervous glances back. Elijah stood rooted, clutching his blanket, stunned into silence. Surprise wasn't strong enough. It felt like the world had tilted. Vale turned his attention to Elijah. His gaze wasn't unkind, but it was intensely scrutinizing. "And you," he said, his voice quieter now, but still carrying that undercurrent of authority. "Why are you out here begging?" The question, direct and unexpected, knocked the breath out of Elijah. He stumbled through his usual explanation, the one worn smooth from repetition. "Sir, just life, you know. Born poor. Stayed poor. Job's hard to get, especially old." He gestured vaguely at his own dark skin, the unspoken words hanging heavy. "Especially for someone who looks like me." Vale made a sound, a sharp hiss of impatience. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Elijah flinched. Was this rich white man about to lecture him too? Vale stepped closer, his expression intense. "I'm so tired," he said, his voice low but vibrating with frustration, "of hearing people blame their circumstances on things they can't control. Skin color, society, bad luck. It's always an excuse, a reason to stay down." He gestured around at the bustling, gritty city street. "Opportunity isn't handed to you on a silver platter. It's seized. It's built." He paused, his eyes locked on Elijah's. "You say you have no money to start? Fine. What if I gave you $500? Elijah blinked. Was he hearing right? $500? That was more money than he'd held at once in. He couldn't remember. Vale continued, his words deliberate. "You get $500. Right now. Your challenge. Turn into $5,000. In exactly 2 months. 60 days. Elijah's mind reeled. 5,000? From 500? In 60 days? It sounded impossible. Like a cruel joke. "If you succeed," Vale said, leaning in slightly, "I will freely give you 30% ownership in one of my companies. That stake is worth, well, over $300,000 today." Elijah gasped. 300,000? It was a number so vast it had no meaning. It was like saying a piece of the moon. "But," Vale's voice hardened, "if you fail, if you come back with less than $5,000, or with nothing but more excuses, then you admit it. You admit that your situation is your own doing. You stop hiding behind reasons. You stop begging. You find another way, or you accept your lot. Deal." The world seemed to shrink to the space between them. The sounds of the city faded, the traffic, the distant sirens, the chatter of pedestrians. Elijah stared at Harrison Vale. The man's face was serious, challenging. Was this real? Was this billionaire offering him a lifeline wrapped in an impossible test? Elijah opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His throat was dry as dust. His mind raced, filled with images of his cold nights on the street, the jeering faces, the constant gnawing emptiness. Could he? Dare he? Vale seemed to understand his speechlessness. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crisp, white business card. He held it out. "Think about it, but don't think too long. You have until dawn tomorrow. If you accept, be at this address at 9 a.m. sharp." He tapped the card. "If you don't show, well, I'll have my answer." With a final, unreadable look, Harrison Vale turned and slid back into the silent luxury of the Mercedes. The car pulled away, leaving Elijah alone on the sidewalk, the card trembling in his suddenly sweaty hand. Family, can you imagine? A simple piece of paper holding the key to a whole new life. This is the power of a single opportunity. Stay tuned to see Elijah's choice. Remember, Black Nation is more than stories. We're a community lifting each other up. Subscribe for more. That night was the longest of Elijah's life. He didn't sleep. He sat on the thin mattress in his tiny, rented room, little more than a cupboard with a window overlooking an alley, and stared at the business card under the flickering light of a bare bulb. Harrison Vale, Vale Enterprises, a prestigious Detroit address. He looked out the grimy window at the sliver of night sky visible between the buildings. Stars were faint pinpricks against the city's glow. He looked maybe my age, Elijah thought, tracing the embossed letters on the card. Maybe even younger. And he owns everything. Buildings. Companies. Million. A wave of bitterness washed over him, followed by a surge of something else. Defiance? Hope. So what if he's white? So what if he was born with a golden spoon? He looked at me, and he saw something. He believed I could do it. Or, at least, he believes I have no excuse not to try. The words Harrison had spat out, nonsense, excuses, echoed. They stung, but they also pricked at something deep inside Elijah, something buried under years of hardship and resignation. Maybe he's partly right. Not about the color, never that, but about giving up. He thought of his mother, working 3 jobs until her hands were raw. She never begged. She never blamed. She just worked until she couldn't anymore. He believed I can do it, Elijah whispered into the quiet room. His voice sounded strange, unfamiliar. I believe I can do it too. The words felt foreign, dangerous, like stepping on a thin ice. But saying them ignited a tiny, flickering flame in his chest. Determination, cold and hard, began to replace the numb despair. As the first gray streaks of dawn painted the sky, Elijah didn't hesitate. He used a precious few dollars from his meager stash for a taxi. The address on the card led him away from the familiar, crumbling streets of his neighborhood, towards the gleaming towers near the riverfront that separated Detroit from the distant skyline of Chicago. The cab pulled up. Elijah stepped out, and his breath caught. Vail Enterprises wasn't just a building. It was a statement. Sleek glass and steel soared upwards, reflecting the morning light and the choppy gray water of the Detroit River. It looked like a sculpture, modern and powerful, utterly alien to Elijah's world of cracked sidewalks and boarded-up windows. It was opulent, yes, but also strangely beautiful. The clean lines, the shimmering glass. It spoke of success, of a future he'd never dared imagine. The sight didn't intimidate him. It poured gasoline on that tiny flame inside. This is what I can reach for, he thought, a fierce new energy crackling through him. This. He pushed through the heavy glass doors. Inside, the air was cool, scented faintly of lemon and clean carpets. The lobby was vast, echoing, filled with expensive-looking furniture and art. It was the direct opposite of the smoky, stale smell clinging to his clothes. He felt painfully out of place, a smudge on a pristine canvas, but the drive Harrison's challenge in this building had ignited wouldn't let him falter. He approached the reception desk, a smooth expanse of dark stone. A young woman with immaculate makeup looked up, her polite smile freezing slightly as she took in his appearance. The worn clothes, the tired face, the aura of the street. He held out Harrison Vail's card like a shield. I'm here to see Mr. Vail, Elijah said, his voice raspy but clear. The receptionist took the card, her eyebrows rising almost imperceptibly. She picked up a phone. Sir, you have a guest. A pause. He says he has your card. No, sir, I don't know his name. But let's just say he's different from your usual guests. She glanced again at Elijah, who was trying not to gawk at the soaring ceiling. Yes, sir. I'll send him right up. An elevator whisked him silently upwards. A staff member directed him to a large office door. Elijah took a deep breath, smoothed his shirt futilely, and knocked. Enter. He pushed the door open. Harrison Vail sat behind a massive desk, the river and the Chicago skyline a breathtaking panorama behind him. He looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his features, quickly replaced by a slow, assessing smile. Elijah Freeman, Vail said, leaning back in his chair. I admit, I wasn't entirely sure I'd see you today. He gestured to a plush chair opposite the desk. Seat. So, you've decided not to be a chicken. You're rising to the challenge. Elijah sat gingerly on the edge of the chair. The opulence was overwhelming. Yes, sir, he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Words seemed to have deserted him. What could he possibly say to this man in this place? Vail just smiled, a hint of something, amusement, curiosity, in his eyes. He didn't press for conversation. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out 5 crisp, new $100 bills. He laid them flat on the desk and slid them toward Elijah. There's your seed money. $500. His gaze was steady, unreadable. 2 months. $5,000. See you then. Elijah reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as he picked up the bills. They felt unreal. He nodded, clutching them tightly. I won't let you down, sir. As he stood to leave, Vale spoke again. Elijah. Elijah paused at the door. One piece of advice. Don't overcomplicate it. The secret, Vale tapped his temple, is in solving a problem. Find a problem people have and solve it better, cheaper, or faster than anyone else. That's where fortunes start. Elijah met his gaze. Thank you, sir. The words held more weight than just for the money. What problem could Elijah possibly solve with just $500? What happened next shocked everyone in Detroit. Don't miss this incredible turnaround. Subscribe to Black Nation now. The first day was a blur of walking. Elijah wandered the streets of Detroit, not begging, but looking. He walked until his feet ached in his worn shoes. He looked at the bustling shops, the crowded bus stops, the overflowing trash cans on street corners. He saw people rushing, stressed, buying coffee, throwing away bottles and cans. He saw problems everywhere: traffic, litter, expensive coffee, but none felt like something he could fix with $500. The money burned a hole in his pocket, a constant, terrifying reminder of the clock ticking. Day 2 found him in the hushed sanctuary of the public library. He pored over business books, magazines, newspapers. He read about startups, investments, marketing. The words swam before his eyes. It all seemed too big, too complex. He left the library more confused than ever, the weight of the challenge pressing down heavier than before. Solving a problem. What problem? He was walking back towards his neighborhood, head down, shoulders slumped, feeling the first icy fingers of despair, when he passed an overflowing dumpster behind a row of busy fast food restaurants. Plastic bottles, soda cans, and greasy paper bags spilled out onto the alley. An old man Elijah vaguely recognized, Mr. Henderson, was painstakingly sorting through the mess, pulling out cans and bottles and putting them into a battered shopping cart. Recycling. It hit Elijah like a physical blow. He stopped dead in his tracks. That was it. That was the problem staring him right in the face, the problem he knew intimately because it had been his solution on many desperate days. Trash, litter, overflowing bins, and people who wanted to recycle but found it inconvenient, messy, or just didn't have a good place to put their bottles and cans. Mr. Henderson and folks like him sorted through the filth for pennies per pound. Businesses had overflowing dumpsters. The city bins were often full or vandalized. He had found his problem. The solution started forming instantly, fueled by Harrison Vale's words and his own hard-won street knowledge. He needed to make recycling easy, clean, and maybe even pleasant. That night, in his tiny room, plans spilled out of him. He sketched on scraps of paper. He needed bins. Lots of them, but not ugly industrial ones. Something noticeable. Something people wouldn't mind having near their shop or on their street corner. The next morning, clutching his $500, Elijah found a discount warehouse on the city's outskirts. He haggled, drawing on every ounce of street-smart negotiation he possessed. He bought 36 large, sturdy plastic bins. They were basic, functional, but clean. $13 each. Total, $468. He had $32 left. Next stop, a craft store. He spent $20 on large, bright yellow, self-adhesive smiley face stickers and a roll of clear, heavy-duty tape. With his last $12, he bought black paint and a stencil set. Back in his room, ignoring his aching back and protesting knees, Elijah transformed the bins. He carefully placed a big, cheerful, smiley face sticker on the front of each bin. Then, using the stencil and black paint, he clearly labeled them recycling, cans and plastic bottles only beneath the smile. He reinforced the lids and hinges with a heavy tape. They looked surprisingly good. Simple, cheerful, clearly marked. Solving the problem, he thought, and maybe making it a little nicer. Elijah almost dropped the bags. $18.50 from one bin in one day. He'd check his other bins. Some had less, some had almost as much. By the time he'd emptied all the bins he could reach before dark, he had $52.30 in his pocket. Pure profit. More money than he'd ever made begging in a single day. The flame inside him roared into a bonfire. Imagine $52 in one day, just by solving a simple problem. This is the power of an idea and hustle. What happens next will blow your mind. Stay with us, Black Nation. He didn't sleep again, but this time it was from excitement, not despair. He bought more bins. And more. He used the profits to expand, placing bins in new neighborhoods, near parks, outside movie theaters. He started politely asking small business owners if he could place a bin near their entrance, explaining it was a free recycling service. Most, seeing the clean, cheerful bin, agreed. He became a familiar figure, quietly emptying bins early in the morning or late at night. The $500 seed money was long gone, reinvested. After 3 weeks, he wasn't just collecting recycling. He was running a small fleet. He had over 100 bins spread across the city. And his savings? He'd painstakingly saved $1,000. He was on track. But Elijah looked at the $1,000 and thought of Harrison Vale's $5,000 target. He could stop expanding, just collect from his existing bins, and probably hit $5,000 in the next few weeks. Safe. But Harrison Vale's words echoed. Stop making excuses for being poor. This wasn't just about passing a test anymore. This was about proving something to himself. He wanted more. He wanted something he built, something solid. He kept reinvesting, buying more bins, reaching further. The bright yellow smiley face bins started getting noticed beyond just the users. One afternoon, as Elijah was locking a bin near a popular downtown plaza, a man in a sharp but approachable suit stopped him. He had kind eyes and a thoughtful expression. "Excuse me," the man said, extending a hand. "Ezekiel Smith. I own a few small businesses around here. I've been noticing your bins popping up everywhere." Elijah wiped his hand nervously on his pants before shaking. "Elijah Freeman, sir. These are yours." Ezekiel gestured to the bin. "Smart. Very smart. Simple, effective, solves a real problem. How many do you have now?" "Over 100, sir," Elijah said, a flicker of pride in his voice. Ezekiel whistled softly. "Impressive growth in, what, a month? How'd you start?" Elijah told him, briefly, about the $500, the challenge, the idea sparked by necessity. Ezekiel listened intently, nodding. "Harrison Vale gave you that challenge." Ezekiel chuckled a knowing sound. "Figures. Likes to stir the pot, that one. But Elijah, this..." He tapped the smiley face on the bin. "This has legs. Real potential. It's not just collecting. You're providing a service the city lacks, and you're making it appealing." He pulled out a business card. "I invest in small businesses with heart, with good ideas. Especially ones started by folks who know the streets. Come see me tomorrow. Let's talk about scaling this up. A chance meeting. An investor." This is how community and opportunity collide. Black Nation celebrates connections like this. Subscribe for more stories of upliftment. The next day, in Ezekiel Smith's modest but busy office, Elijah laid out his operation. Ezekiel asked sharp questions about costs, locations, volume, future plans. Elijah answered honestly, pulling figures from his worn notebook. At the end, Ezekiel smiled. "I like your hustle, Elijah. I like the idea. Here's what I propose." He slid a check across the desk. $10,000. For a 25% stake. In your, let's call it, smile cycle. Elijah stared at the check. $10,000. It was more than double the $5,000 he needed for Vale. He could walk away from the challenge right now, a success. But Ezekiel's words, scaling up, resonated. He didn't just want to win Vale's bet. He wanted to own something. He took a deep breath. "Mr. Smith, thank you. But I don't just want money for bins. I have another idea." He leaned forward, sketching on a notepad. "Public toilets. Clean, pay-per-use ones. In busy areas. Tourists, workers, people waiting for buses. It's a problem." And next to each one, he drew 2 bins, a regular trash bin and a smile cycle bin. Ezekiel's eyes lit up. Combining services, solving 2 problems at once. Smart. Very smart. He grinned. "All right, Elijah Freeman. The $10,000 stands. But let's make it for Smile Cycle and this new venture. You handle the setup, the locations, the operations. I'll handle the permits, some of the upfront costs for the toilet units. Partners." Elijah shook his hand, his heart pounding. "Partners." He didn't give Harrison Vale the $10,000. He poured it, along with Ezekiel's backing, into his vision. The next 4 weeks were a whirlwind. Elijah, fueled by an energy he'd never known, worked 18-hour days. He sourced small, self-contained public toilet units, basic but clean. With Ezekiel's help navigating bureaucracy, he secured permits and placed the first few units in prime, high-foot traffic locations, near the Riverwalk outside a major bus terminal, near a popular market. Each unit cost users 50 cents for 5 minutes of clean, private access. And right beside each one stood 2 bins, one for regular trash, one bright yellow Smile Cycle bin. The concept was an instant hit. The toilets provided a desperately needed service. The Smile Cycle bins, positioned conveniently right there, saw usage skyrocket. Revenue flowed from both streams. Elijah hired his first 2 employees, reliable guys he knew from the neighborhood who needed a break, to help with emptying and maintenance. By the end of week 7, Elijah sat on a worn stool in the small storage unit he now rented, his first business expense beyond bins. He counted the money in his new, simple ledger book. Daily revenue, averaging over $500. His savings, after paying his small crew, covering costs, and reinvesting, $25,000. He closed the book. A slow, disbelieving smile spread across his face. It wasn't just the money. It was the accomplishment, the sheer impossible scale of what he'd done in 60 days. He looked down at his clothes, still worn, still carrying the faint scent of the street. That needed to change. From $500 to $25,000 in 60 days. But Elijah wasn't done. His transformation was just beginning. Black Nation witnessed this glow-up. On the morning of the 60th day, Elijah walked into a barber shop, a proper one, not the back-alley clippers he'd used occasionally. He got a sharp, clean cut. Then he went to a department store. He bought a simple but well-fitting navy suit, a crisp white shirt, a tie with a subtle pattern, and a pair of solid black shoes that didn't have holes. Dressing in the store's changing room, he looked at himself in the mirror. A stranger looked back. A businessman. His eyes, usually shadowed with weariness, held a new light. Confidence. Pride. He took a taxi back to the shimmering tower of Vale Enterprises. This time, he walked through the gleaming lobby not as an intruder, but as a man with purpose. The same receptionist looked up. Her eyes widened in genuine surprise. She didn't recognize the sharp, confident man approaching her desk. Elijah Freeman to see Mr. Vale, he said, his voice firm and clear. I believe he's expecting me. She stammered slightly, checking her computer. Why, yes, Mr. Freeman. Right this way, sir. The sir felt different this time. He walked down the familiar corridor, but the feeling was utterly new. He wasn't admiring the art. He felt he belonged in a place striving for excellence. He pushed open Harrison Vale's office door without knocking. Vale was standing by the window, looking out at the river. He turned. For a moment, his usual composure slipped. His eyes swept over Elijah, the suit, the shoes, the held-high head. A slow, wide, genuine smile spread across Vale's face. Elijah Freeman, he said, warmth in his voice. I was expecting you. He gestured to the chairs. Please sit. You look different. Elijah sat, but not on the edge this time. He sat back, meeting Vale's gaze directly. It's been quite a 2 months, Mr. Vale. I imagine it has, Vale replied, sitting opposite him. Care to tell me about it? He listened intently as Elijah recounted the journey. The despair, the flash of inspiration with the bins, the slow build, the encounter with Ezekiel Smith, the expansion into public toilets. He didn't embellish. The facts were astounding enough. When Elijah finished, he reached into the simple briefcase Ezekiel had given him. He pulled out a thick envelope and placed it on Vale's immaculate desk. $25,000, Elijah said simply. Vale stared at the envelope. He didn't open it. He looked from the money to Elijah's face, then back again. A long moment of silence stretched out. Finally, Vale leaned back, letting out a low whistle. A look of profound respect, mixed with clear surprise, replaced his usual confident mask. Well, Vale said, his voice quieter now, filled with something Elijah hadn't heard before: humility. It seems I was wrong, utterly wrong. He met Elijah's eyes. About the excuses, about the opportunities. Or rather, he amended, I was right that excuses are worthless, but I underestimated what happens when you give certain people a real chance. He gestured at Elijah. You didn't just meet the challenge, Elijah. You smashed it. You built something. You saw potential where others see excuses. He smiled a real smile. And I was right to see potential in you. Thank you, Mr. Vale. Elijah said, the gratitude deep and sincere. Not just for the money. Thank you for believing enough to throw down the challenge. It forced me to believe in myself. Family, this is it. The moment of truth. But the story doesn't end here. The best is yet to come. Black Nation, are you inspired? True to his word, Harrison Vale handled the legal transfer smoothly. Elijah Freeman became the owner of a 30% stake in Vale Enterprises' logistics subsidiary, an asset worth over $300,000. It was life-changing money. But Elijah didn't stop. He didn't cash out and relax. He saw the potential Vale had mentioned, the potential to solve bigger problems. He used his new capital and credibility not to buy fancy cars, but to fuel Smile Cycle and his public convenience venture. He partnered formally with Ezekiel Smith. They secured city contracts for expanded recycling services. They rolled out more clean public toilets, always paired with Smile Cycle bins, across Detroit, then into neighboring cities. Within a year, Elijah Freeman wasn't just a man who passed a challenge. He was the owner of a thriving, socially conscious business. His net worth soared past $500,000 and was climbing steadily toward $1 million. He moved out of his tiny room into a clean apartment. He hired more people from his old neighborhood, offering not just jobs, but hope. His story spread, not as a fluke, but as proof. Proof that heart, hustle, and seizing an opportunity could shatter barriers. Proof that the color of your skin didn't dictate the height of your dreams, only the depth of your determination. He spoke at community centers, his message simple: stop waiting for the world to change. Change your piece of it. Find a problem. Solve it. Start where you are. Use what you have. And the name Elijah Freeman became synonymous not with begging, but with resilience, ingenuity, and the extraordinary power of a single seized chance. This family is the undeniable power of grit and opportunity. Elijah saw a problem, found a solution, and built a fortune with just $500 and an unbreakable spirit. His story proves skin color doesn't define your destiny. Your heart and hustle do. We are Black Nation, a community, a movement, a family lifting each other up, sharing stories of triumph. If this inspired you, hit that subscribe button. Share this story. Let's show the world the power of our community. More incredible stories of resilience and success are coming. Stay strong, stay focused, and always seize your opportunity. Subscribe to Black Nation now.